You were just setting up a theatre company for yourself. So what started as the rap club, aptly named, I take it just because you all had raps every meeting. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Interval Conversations. I'm so happy to be joined today by one of my oldest friends. I went to university with him, I did shows with him growing up, and I used to live with him. So please welcome Jake Marsden. Jake, how are you doing?
Thanks very much. I'm not bad at all. Having a nice day, thanks. Although I can feel the heat outside. I think it's nice weather, and I'm responding accordingly by keeping myself shut in all day.
Yeah, good. That's what I've been doing as well. So, me and Jake, as I was saying, we've done quite a few shows over the year. I think it started with Gel the Musical, about 2007.
2007? That 13 years ago?
Yeah, something. Yeah. Then obviously Disco Inferno, Forbidden Planet, Sweeney Todd, Witches of Eastwick, and probably quite a few more that I just can't remember off the top of my head.
That's when it started getting serious, isn't it? When we were doing like Sweeney Todd and stuff like that.
Yeah, where you were jumping off the set every night.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? I did that stunting and that.
Well, I know, I had to chase you. I almost went down after you a few nights. But since then, Jake has gone on to start his own podcast called Staying in Touch, which is a fantastic podcast to listen to, so get on that. But he's also worked for the likes of John Godber in a few professional shows. So before we get into those, Jake, how did you get your start in theatre?
I always attribute my late dear grandma for that. When I was like 10 or 11, she gave me this advert in the Halifax Courier, and it was because they wanted Lost Boys for the Panto. I guess they were doing Peter Pan. So, and she'd given me that. She'd seen me. I think I played like the rat guy in Wind in the Willows or something. And I did Artful Dodger as well when I was like 10 in year 6, and I really enjoyed it. So my grandma was like, "Go along, audition for that." So I did, and that was one of those like productions where they have obviously it's like a panto, so they had like I guess like famous faces in it, which was quite cool. I think that was like before the Neil Hurst days.
Yeah, that was pre-Neil.
Yeah, pre-Neil. So yeah, I did that, and that's I met this kid Brad, who subsequently became my best friend through my teens. But he was the one who sort of he invited me to like try out his stage school Saturday, thing. So I did, and then that's where we met.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think and then it was a spiral from there really. And then I never. It was always something I enjoyed, and but kept under wraps because it's not a very cool thing to be into when we were younger. I don't know what that's like now. And then sort of was really not enjoying sixth form to the point where I dropped out. But apart from everybody else around me said, "No, you're not dropping out. You are going back to school on Monday." And I was like, "No, it's not." And I did, but I finished my first year of sixth form, and then it was suggested that I should take it at college, go do drama at college, and I was like, "Really? What for?" It's just like something you do for fun, innit? On the weekends and learn some songs and do it on stage. And they were like, "Yeah, you're all right at it, so you should go try it." And I was like, "Well, it sounds a lot more fun than what I'm doing," so I thought I'd go for it. And then I thought I was going to be an actor and go to drama school, but sort of didn't get in, and I was like a few years behind everyone in terms of the progression of that and whatever. And then eventually I was like staring my 20s down and thought, I can try and get into drama school for the next 5 years and keep failing, or I can do something a little bit more expedient and pragmatic and go to uni instead. So that's why I went to Hull, to sort of get a more comprehensive degree instead and try and get a start there, which was like sort of a random choice. But I heard that the course was good and the facilities were like second to none in my opinion of the few places I looked around, so it made sense. And then I was thinking about this yesterday. Do you ever see Gilmore Girls?
I've seen a few little bits of it, but not.
I also don't know whether it's very cool to admit liking that, but it's a great show. There's the one of the main characters in that, Rory Gilmore. She has this friend called Paris, and Paris is like this character who they're like at school together and they have this feud. And then in a later season, she goes to uni and Paris turns up, and all of a sudden Paris is like living with her. And that's how I feel about you, about like how you just are like everywhere along the line. You just pop up. Like, oh, Nathan's in this season. What happens in this season? Oh, me and Nathan are living together in a flat for it. Cool, all right, yeah, nice one. So, obviously,
it was a really nice flat though.
Good flat.
Very far away, but.
Yeah, so yeah, then I went to Hull. So that's like my start. That's when the notion that it might be a career choice was, well, that's everything from my first, why I wanted to even be on stage in the first place, and then why I thought I might do it as a career.
Yeah. So has there been a personal highlight for you within these shows we've done over the years?
That's a really good question. There's like in terms of a personal highlight, I guess the real magic of these sorts of things is that you make all sorts of meaningful connections with the people that you're working with, and hopefully with the people who come see it as well, see the stuff that you make. I suppose a personal highlight is like, it's very difficult for me to be like, this feels selfish, but I guess when you make your own stuff and then somebody says good, that's a real highlight. I mean, like I've not done very much in like pro theatre, but everything I have done has just been like way more cool than I like deserve to have experienced, So like being cast by John Godber was like brilliant every time, and like that was good. I mean, the whole thing is just like a strange sort of blur. I've always felt like I've got one foot in and one foot out, so it seems like harder to track in that way, But yeah, I guess those big, well, I mean, what seem like, I guess they seem like steps on the way somewhere, but like being cast for the first time and then writing my own show that then people seem to sort of enjoy. Probably two highlights.
Yeah. Because you sort of touched upon it then. My next question was going to be, what was it like working for John Godber, doing all these original plays he wrote?
It's crazy. It's like this isn't to discredit or be disparaging to our degree or to the teachers there or anything, because they were incredible, and I can't imagine having been anywhere else. But in another sense, I feel like I almost learned more on the job with John than I did through my whole. And I mean, obviously they're sort of different experiences, aren't they? I guess he is more academic than anything. There's a balance, but it is more academic. And obviously working with John was like actually being a professional actor. So I learned so much about that, about the craft, about the discipline, as it were. So yeah, that's, and it's also like a short-term British theatre history lesson too, because obviously like he's been doing it for 30, probably nearly 35 years, he would probably say. And so just the stories that he has and the people that he's worked with, and the advice too that comes out in within the stories is just invaluable, and something that I feel incredibly lucky to have had, and that really shaped me. I like, my first thing that I did with him, we rehearsed for a week, and I feel like after those 5 days of rehearsal, that's like the most I've learned. After that, it was more like remembering stuff, and getting in the room with him again would be like, oh yeah, I remember this now from, and I need a lot of reminding, believe me, but most of it was just like remembering. So yeah, you learn so much apart from the opportunity to be in these like brilliant works and work with like actual legends too, in my eyes. Just the learning is amazing.
So how did the opportunity come about to work with Godber? Because I know how it came up, because I almost auditioned, but if you'd like to tell everyone.
Well, I think it's funny you say that, because I think the reason that I did get cast was because a lot of people almost auditioned, and then for everyone who didn't, it just made the chances better for me. And it was just that he'd written a show called Ruby and the Vinyl, which was like a new musical collaboration with between himself and his daughter Elizabeth, who's now a writer and a producer in her own right, and Ruby McIntosh, who wrote the songs. And he decided to cast it from our degree, from Hull drama students. So, you know, we'd seen that opportunity posted, and it was a little bit of like a pinch myself, what's going on? Why is that opportunity just on our, you know, Facebook group? So, and I sort of feel like it was too bizarre for most people to go for it. I think like a lot of people looked at it and then either went, I'm never going to get that, or when like this seems, do you know what I mean? There's probably just a cognitive conscious thing that turned people off from it, because there weren't many people that auditioned, which is a long-winded way of saying that opportunity came about because I was one of the few people who auditioned. But yeah, that was it, and that was a really big lesson that sort of has. I don't know whether I take my own advice every time, but it's a lesson in like taking your opportunities, isn't it? Because you actually don't know when it is going to come through. So yeah, just because I think purely just because I went for the opportunity and thought what a great, you know, to meet John and read for him would be amazing. That's all I wanted out of that opportunity, you know. And then obviously it went a little bit further than just what I wanted. So that's the only reason, really.
Because after that, it cast you again in a couple of more shows. So you technically opened up the whole new theatre after the refurbishment.
Yeah, it was it the first production?
One of the first, yeah.
Production, yeah. Or was it one of the first? I can't remember.
I think it was the second. I think
yeah,
you were definitely the loudest opener.
Yeah, that seems right. Yeah, we were in the Kings of Hull, which was mad. That was nuts. Loads of people saw that. Which was that was huge. And again, working with some great people, and that was and still is the biggest thing I've done in terms of the production and the sort of scale of it. And that was a huge learning experience. And that really, that's probably the best job I've had out of the very, very few I've had, but the best one in terms of, I'm a little bit work shy, to be honest. And I think that because in that show, my job was to sit and play the acoustic bass to these, again, Ruby McIntosh had written some amazing songs for it. And I'd always wanted to play an acoustic bass too. I thought they were so cool ever since I saw the Nirvana MTV Unplugged gig. And I thought, wow, there's an acoustic version of that. That sounds cool. And yeah, so that was amazing. And we were playing to, you know, some nights we were playing to like 900 people, I think was like the most we'd sold. And I'm sure there was some sort of figure about that. Obviously, it's nothing to do with me, but I'm sure there was some figure about that show that it was like the most high-selling show in the new theatre's history or something.
Oh wow!
Which honestly, like the amount of people who saw it, and obviously it was called Kings of Hull, and it was about the rugby and stuff, and it was a John Godber show, so a lot of people in Hull were really excited about it. So it was just to be on that ride. And to be on that ride with some really close friends as well, because our friends Grace, who we went to uni with, and Joe, who we went to uni with, I'd worked with Grace on Ruby and the Vinyl on the previous thing, and Joe and Grace were in Kings of Hull, and we were just kind of like rocking up to the rehearsal every day, being like, "What is going on? Why are we allowed to be here? This is crazy," you know. So to go through that with your friends, as well as even being there in the first place and learning all that great stuff and doing a show that was really speaking to the people of Hull in a meaningful way, and being in that great space as well, especially after it had been refurbed, it's just like huge. It feels like playing in an airplane hangar or something. Yeah, it was just a crazy. That's like, and again, like being quite work shy, it's really nice to get on a project like that where literally your job is just to turn up and play the bass and enjoy the experience. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was just, and honestly, I said this to. I always remember, because I haven't like tried to do anything about it. But after that show, I said to Ruby that I didn't want that to be the last time that we played together, because I just think she's incredible. And I've not reached out since, you know, to do anything, but that was one of the biggest honours as well, just to play her tunes. She's great.
After that show, I think this next show, you were living with me at the same time. You were living with me during Kings of Hull as well, so I was used to seeing your face and all the posters around town and stuff.
I was going to go on a bus event initially, I think, and then we're sort of excited about that. And it went on bus stops in the end, so that was surreal that we were on bus stops all over Hull.
Because then you got a script, like you went into rehearsals for another Godber show over in Beverley, Seasons in the Sun. So would you like to tell people about that show? 'Cause you worked with another one of our good uni friends, Mr. Matthew Galloway.
Yeah, Seasons was like boot camp, and not in like an X Factor kind of way, but like in a army soldier kind of way. Actually, that's very that's not very nice. We've been watching SAS Who Dares Win. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Oh my god, mate! They simulate like SAS training with these guys, and it's just like absolutely brutal. So, you know, without saying I've been through that, because I haven't. Seasons in the Sun was definitely like it was it was a real. I'm trying to think of like I can't, you know, not trying to make it sound like a negative experience, because it wasn't in any way. It was a real pleasure and an honour, obviously, but it was a lot more work than turning up and playing the acoustic bass. Maybe I could, you know, just put it on. That was really much more, because I had a principal role in that, as did Matt, and it was the biggest, you know, the biggest undertaking that I'd had. And initially, actually, I'd said that I didn't think I could commit to that, because it was in my third year. It was in our third year, and I was like, no, it's really important that I get my my studies finished, and, you know, make sure I do my dissertation properly and get a good grade, because I've done the whole degree. It'd be a shame to, you know, sort of spoil it now. And then my partner Sydney was like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. And I was like, yeah, you're right, that is ridiculous. And was like, there was a while where I'd kind of said, you know, I wasn't sure I was going to do it. And then I remember one day, like, scrambling, getting my phone after I'd had this realization, like, on the phone to John, sending a quick, like, a text, like, yeah, go on, of course I'll do it, which absolutely was the right decision, you know. Yeah, that was a show where me and Matt played two kids in between going to school and going to uni, and they sign up to be bin men for the summer. And I think they rock up thinking it's going to be a bit of an easy ride, bit of a, you know, way to make money and sort of hang around and make fun of people. And they actually, you know, they rock up and they're like, no, this is brutal, hard work. And you are learning all the ins and outs of municipal and sort of domestic and social trauma, you know, that everybody's in the middle of. So that was a really interesting way for, and there was something so beautifully meta about that show, where the characters were learning a lot about, you know, this is the real world, welcome to the real world, it's time to figure out how you know, how you deal with it. And also it was like a lesson in that way for Matt and I as well, that we were in that room for the first time doing this proper gig, and it was a lot of pressure, because, you know, there's no hiding behind the microphone stand when you play a note wrong on the acoustic bass. It's like, it's me and Matt all the time on stage in every scene. And not only have you got to be there, you got to do it right, you got to do it good. So it was a lot of pressure, and rightly so, because we wanted to do the work justice. We wanted to do this, like I say, the subject matter was quite, it was very sincere and authentic. So we wanted to do that justice too, because there was a lot of reference to, you know, mental health issues, and in exploring that in a context where is, you know, sort of around 70s bin men. So it was kind of a way to explore how, in a very masculine setting, it's and geographically as well, it was set in like South Yorkshire, quite sort of like hard up community. So in those that sort of served as an allegory for how it's difficult to broach these wide social issues and also personal issues of mental health. So it was really important for us that we were doing it justice and really, squeezing the blood out of the stone. So we did, we worked really hard on that, and that was a few weeks in Beverley, and then that transferred to Wakefield. And then Wakefield was another right, it was like kind of almost feels like it was a gear change again. It was just stepped up another notch, and I think that's largely because it was kind of set. The show was set in Wakefield. It was kind of about the Wakefield people. So again, we felt that pressure in Beverley. Well, now actually the people who you're talking about are going to come see it, and we were always told, if you get it wrong, they're going to tell you about it when you're going to lose them like that. So it has to be, had to be absolutely a certain way. It was about precision. It was about getting it right. And it's a very interesting challenge, very exciting, especially because like I say, we were learning about that as we were going along. So we were learning how to be these people and also how, just to do it with sensitivity and with understanding. So it was a very interesting and exciting challenge again, and learned a lot. But the doing the show in the Wakefield Theatre Royal, which again, beautiful space and great people, was really, really cool. Absolutely incredible, brilliant opportunity. So
So I remember,
so that was
yeah. So I remember around the same time, you were just setting up a theatre company for yourself. So what started as the Rap Club, aptly named. I take it just because you all had raps every meeting, and then it eventually evolved to become Just Club. So could you tell us about Just Club?
Yeah. So I guess the way that worked was the company was in its stages of being formed by Matt and Jamie, who again were in our year at uni, and I'd become quite close with at least Jamie at the time. And then we did, they pitched when we did in our third year, I'm sure you've talked about Makey P and loads of these already, right?
No, not really.
No? Cool. Well, that's our our big third year project. Jamie and Matt proposed one, and it was like a gig theatre reimagining of Love's Labour's Lost, the Shakespeare play. So I got on board with that production and was cast in that, and then got quite sort of close to what I basically did was I wormed my way into the creative and production team to a point where I got everyone to believe that I was sort of helping to direct it, and started telling people what to do, and they listened, which was nice. So what happened?
My group.
So what happened was Jamie and Matt were kind of heading the production, and then I was invited along to a rap meeting, which was cool, very exciting. So I was like, oh, cool, what's sort of going on? So it was quite, and that was where we started to talk about the show a little bit more in depth, and just kind of discovered a mutual interest in working together and on working on a thing together. So we kind of thought of, and this isn't to say that we were the creative force or that we were in charge of the production or that it was what it was because of us, but we started, in hindsight, we tend to think of that process as the beginning of us as a company, and as the first kind of production that we would call sort of would say was kind of based on our collective vision, so then through that, because I knew that they were gonna make a company anyway, and I'd written this show called Standing Too Close on Our Own in the Dark, which actually, saying that I'd written it then is like saying I learnt the alphabet because I've learned A through C, which is to say that it was what it is now and what it was in the end was not, what it wasn't at the beginning. It went through very, very many iterations, but essentially I saw joining the company as kind of an expedient way to get the show made. And similarly, they weren't sure what they wanted their first project to be. So as I remember it, I kind of proposed to the board that I had this script, and perhaps, it might be an initial project. And I'm not exactly sure about what the conversation was where we decided that I was in on the joke, as it were. But yeah, I guess we stuck together, and all of a sudden it became the three of us. So we couldn't get away from this rap club thing that it was a bit of a joke, and we enjoyed being, like a unit. Like, I think we felt like a bit of a boy band or something. Yeah. But also it wasn't a very good basis for naming your company. And we got to a point where we had to start, because we got a bit of involvement from other outside organisations and stuff. And it got to a point where we needed a company name, literally just for the practicality of writing it down on Facebook or something. So we wanted Just Club because we liked the club word. So then, it came up, what about Just Club? And then that became the thing. So that's where we...
Then my company name. Still makes me laugh every time.
There's nowhere near as much thought or wit or irony in our company name as there is in yours.
But someone was asking me, why have you called it that one? It made me laugh. Plus, when someone likes your group page on Facebook and it says so-and-so's accepted your invite. So every now and then I just get, so-and-so accepted your invitation for just the tip.
It's crude. It's
very childish. It makes me laugh. So you were on about sort of like gig theatre with Standing Too Close and doing obviously Love Labours. I know from seeing you perform, you used to gig a fair amount over the past few years. So how did you actually get your start gigging?
My brother was learning guitar when we were really young, and then when he wasn't playing it, I would like steal his guitar and his tabs and started teaching myself. And then eventually decided that it was a good idea to subject audiences to the noise I was making. So I did one or two things I say pubs, but I'm pretty sure I only really ever had a job in like a gig at like the Murgatroyd Arms on Skircutt Green a few times.
Oh, yeah.
And I was from again through theatre, I was doing stuff with other amateur organisations and met people that I eventually started playing in a band with and stuff, which essentially went down like their bass player was leaving for uni, and Paddy, our mate who was the singer and the sort of the band leader, sent me a message one day and he was like, "You play the bass, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, all the time, like of course, every day." And like really, obviously I'd never picked the bass up, not really. Like I had actually once played the bass on one song at their gig once, just because they invited me on stage to do it. But yeah, so I went along for a practice to pretend I knew what I was doing, and managed to, fool them a little bit into whatever, and then became a part of the band. Yeah, so then we were playing around a little bit, and that was cool.
I remember it getting to a point with Small Words, the band, where you were more or less doing every instrument in the band at one point or the other.
That was always my dream, because I'd seen them in the Queen Victoria pub in North Arran, which is now the 22 The Square Steakhouse, and that was the first time I'd seen them. And I'm a drummer first and foremost, so my dear old friend Tom Kay was the drummer, and I was watching him going like, "Oh man, I really wish that like he'd, like one day his arm would be tired or something, and they'd ask me to play the drums for them." And that was from that first time I saw them play a gig, I was like, I want to be in this band and I want to be the drummer. And obviously I'm not going to like call a hit out on Tom, so that I could play the drums. I was very happy for him, but I was jealous in a very sort of nice, friendly way. So obviously, like, as soon as they said, do you want to play any, they could have said, like, do you want to just like come carry the gear, and then we'll throw a pint in your face, but you can also come and clap into the microphone on one song every gig. I'd be like, yeah, I'm there, sign me up, can't wait. So yeah, just jumped at the chance. And yeah, I did it. I always like, I would have done I would have done anything for that band. And I think once I played, before I was in the band, they played my surprise 18th birthday.
Oh,
And I did play drums with them on a couple of songs that night. That was cool.
it's like Burn Me Out and God, what was the other? Did they write Neat Little Package by then? I don't think they did.
I don't know. I would have thought so, but I'm not sure.
Been a few years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
So going off, obviously your experience with gigs, how did you use that knowledge to incorporate it into the shows?
Oh, it's an assumption that I did.
Sure.
Yeah, gig theatre was a funny one, right? When we started, the company was ostensibly a gig theatre company. That's what Matt and Jamie were interested in doing. Originally, they were going to do Shakespeare adaptations. And I had this, again, I guess it's like the Nirvana Unplugged thing. I really liked the idea of, because I guess when you, and this is probably like there's probably a reason why you don't see this, but I kind of felt like the gig theatre that I'd seen was really cool and like loud and tons of instruments on stage. And I kind of thought, well, what if you do that, but you bring it down, and instead of electric guitars and a drum kit, you've just got acoustic guitars, and everyone can sort of sit around and have a cup of tea and feel like we're just hanging out and having a hug. So it was a negotiation always, and obviously it was our inaugural project as a company. We'd never done, apart from Love's Labours, which sort of took the more raucous approach, and rightly so. We were learning on the job, very much so, you know. So we were trying to figure these things out. How do you turn the show into a gig that people will enjoy, and also latch onto the narrative of it, and understand the messaging and the themes and all that sort of thing. So and it was funny really, because what we did with it, to our to our credit, but also in hindsight, sort of maybe painted ourselves into a corner just a little bit. So probably relevant to talk about like the trajectory of the show and where it went. We did it at, first and foremost, and we mostly did it because it was like it's a prestigious space and we could get it really affordably, and everybody wants to play there. We booked the Adelphi,
Yeah.
which obviously is a really like legendary but very accessible and really accommodating and warm, wonderful spot in Hull that just felt really appropriate to do our first time out there. So that's where we decided to debut the show. But the issue with that is that it is a live music venue, right? And it's not really conducive to this atmosphere where everyone's got blankets around their shoulders and can, you know, sip a cup of tea and think about their feelings in a sort of introspective and thoughtful way. Not to say that you can't do that in the Adelphi, but what we did was we turned the thing into like a huge event. And by then we'd had some support from the whole company, Middle Child, which still to this day, you know, one of our biggest sort of thanks always go to Middle Child. So we had a big turnout for that show, and what it turned into was kind of, and to be fair as well, this is like partly down to me, because I like decided that I wanted this big like grandiose kind of opening where there's like big synth chords and like lights and stuff, and we all come out like really slow and like look out and stuff, and it was really cool for what it was. But then what happened is we got booked for the National Student Drama Festival, which was kind of our end game, you know. That was everything we could have wanted for that first year out. But we got booked into literally a club, so it was like, again, Adelphi but like times 2.
Yeah.
And then in the time between like rehearsing and redeveloping the show and getting to the drama festival, it became quite apparent to me, at least, that there's this tension in the material where you're trying to have this like introspective, poetic, really kind of like delicate, gentle, beautiful, sort of poor, fragile guy at the center of this story, but you've put it in a place where people want to like forget all that stuff. They just want to like drink loads and the mute, so there was just kind of a tonal dissonance, and that's not to say that it was the wrong thing or whatever. I think it's just like, it just really went to show, I think, that you've got to be so careful and precise in having those conversations and making those decisions about what the feel of the show is going to be and all the rest of it. And I mean, the argument could be made that we wouldn't have got to NSDF if we hadn't had that sort of raucous, atmosphere about it in the first place. That really was like a really exciting event, and I think the atmosphere and the support of people is every bit what sold us, as well as the material of the show and the execution of the production itself. So I don't think we did it. I don't think I would do it any differently now. But yeah, we definitely were built on, to sort of go back to your question. Yeah. We definitely were built on, our aspiration was like, and this was Matt who directed the show. It was kind of, I always remember him saying this quite a lot. The idea was that when you go to a gig, and I guess we thought of it more in terms of the spectators than the performers. I guess in terms of the craft and the performance and stuff, all that stuff naturally informs what you do on stage, your experience that you've had previous. And yeah, I did mash together like thinking, what does it feel like to play the acoustic bass on stage? In sort of a rugby show for whole people, or to play the drums, or whatever. How do you engage the audience where you've not got that fourth wall in the same way? And I think we thought of ourselves more as a band than certainly me and Jamie did anyway, who played the music on stage. But in terms of what we wanted the audience to feel like from like a spectator's point of view, it was always about connection. Sorry, I just keep smacking. Sorry. It was always about connection. It was about that, and it was about presentness as well. It was about that moment where you're at a gig and it's just the ultimate sort of like meditative state where everything, all your troubles in your life just sort of disappear. And actually also sometimes you might be, I know when I like go see my favorite bands or something, there's so much memory and so much emotional resonance attached to it that you actually can start to like look at your life and certain things in a different way, because I guess you're transported to sort of I guess like we felt like it should be like liminal, so the rules didn't apply in the same way, and it was just like it should be a state of transition, right? I guess theatre is obviously like catharsis, so it should be a transition from whatever you feel about something at the start of it. We wanted to invite that state of presentness and of transition so that they might be able to feel slightly differently about it, or at least have thought about it in a new way by the end of the show. And those things in particular were like anxiety and mental health, and also in like putting your like wanting something that you think is going to change your life or make your life better, and then actually realizing that you kind of have to do that stuff for yourself. That was kind of the subject matter of the show. But yeah, whether or not any of that comes from like my experience of gigging, I'm not sure. But in terms of that's what we wanted the audience to feel, And I guess that's where the bigger production elements came from, because I guess we felt like that came from a distanciation, which obviously you have when you see a gig. You don't believe that, well, it is real. It's real. So we needed it to have that element of reality to it. Like we didn't feel like we were watching characters in a show. We felt like we were just encouraging this experience, which was real and happening in real time together.
Very good answer.
I had practiced it for about a year and a half.
So I take it did the show change at all when you took it up to Edinburgh?
oh mate, it's just night and day, and then another night and another day, and then about a fortnight later is actually what we come up with. We were changing things all the time, and I tell you what happened, right? A really important thing that happened for me was that the show was really like it felt to me like it was intrinsically linked to my own experience as a person. So it was kind of built on my own experiences in real life. And I am still interested in like semi-autobiographical work, and think that in the right context that can be a really powerful device. But the biggest thing that I learned was that theatre, when you make it, is not about you. It's not. I'm not making it for me. It's not about me. It's about people are going to come see it, and if they're going to resonate with it, then it has to be for them. It has to be about them and not about me. So there was a while where I was like clinging on to certain things because I felt like for me, for my sort of therapeutic and cathartic experience of getting all this stuff out, like it was really important that we explored and sort of what's the word I'm trying to say, like plundered all these things in the right way, so that I got enough emotional fulfillment out of it. And it took a while for me to bring myself around to that idea that nobody cares, that it's theatre, you're making theatre, right? So somebody has to like it has to be more about, they have to get more out of it than you, if anything, or you all, come out of it the same. So we hired this ace actor who now, thankfully, is a really good mate of ours, called Jack Chamberlain, who does all sorts around, and he's got his own theatre company called Brick by Brick, and they do awesome stuff. But when he came on the project, which we were all like, wow, this guy is like, he's for real. And we felt really lucky that he'd attached himself to us really early on in our careers. And he went above and beyond, like on dramaturgy and directing choices and his performance, where he took it so seriously, man. And he was just incredible. And so it was impossible for me not to listen to Jack's suggestions and his assertions about what was right and what was, maybe needed to change. And thankfully for me, the most beautiful thing over the year of working on that show was that I started out quite sort of like, I felt like I was the auteur and felt like my experience was really important to this show. And by the end of it, someone would say like, oh, I think this word, and I was like buzzing off that. I was like excited to be like, whatever you just said, we'll do it. We'd change that, whatever I think, throw it out, it doesn't matter. And that's when, it wasn't until that point that I thought, we're making theatre now, we're cooking, So we had tons of people come see it in like rehearsed sort of work in progress stages, although there weren't many of those stages, because we ended up, we kept going like, oh, we've just done the show and now we have to go to NSDF really quick, but we need to make changes. So, you'd be like working really quick to tweak the narrative and certain framing choices and whatever, and then getting people to come see it and then trying to take their advice on board again and change it. And honestly, mate, by the time we got to Edinburgh, it was kind of like, this is as close as we'll get.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a feeling of like, yeah, this is the show now, it's done. And so when we did it at first, I mean, I did a rehearsed reading of it a long time ago now, and that was like baby steps, baby stages. So then it was really different again when I'd written it for this first stage. Then in that rehearsal process, it changed a lot. Then it changed fundamentally between the Adelphi and the Student Drama Festival. And then between then and Edinburgh, it was like a different show twice again. But I was excited about that. And I also, I had this vision that the show would be really versatile and malleable anyway, so that you could like keep doing it, because the gig theatre element, we wanted, like, if you really enjoy a band, you'll go see them as many times as they're playing. It doesn't matter if you've seen them 3 times already, you'll go again because you really like them live. And there's that live nature of it that makes it slightly different every time you see it. So I thought, what if this show was like slightly different every time you saw it? So we could play one place and then play this, the same place a couple of months later, and people would still come out because they got something different from it every time. So I was really excited by the prospect that it would always be sort of different.
It was sort of, I never actually got to see it on its feet.
Right.
Because we lived together, you had all the meetings more or less at the flat. So I only saw the behind the scenes stuff, like little rewrites and stuff, and
Yeah.
like some of the planning. So I've never got the chance to see it.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
But I've heard good things.
So have I. I don't believe any of them.
So yeah, I've just got one last question. Do you have any advice for anyone trying to get into this wonderful business once it's safe?
Yeah, I think you got to listen, man. You know, I think it's real difficult. I just can't. I feel like everybody. This might be wrong, but I feel like everybody starts out with an idea of how it works, of how something works, and you need that, because otherwise, how do you? If you spend your life second guessing, like, oh, I don't really understand how this works, I wouldn't be good at that, I don't know how to do this, then you'll never do it. Whereas if you got to kind of embrace that feeling and do it anyway. I always said when we were starting out, like the Sex Pistols, I don't think this is true, but it's in my head anyway. I heard in a documentary that the Sex Pistols didn't know how to play their instruments when they started a band. And that's like, that didn't stop them becoming the Sex Pistols, you know? So, we had a little joke in the rehearsals eventually, that we would say it was a joke, but we also used it, which was, you don't know it's genius until you try it. So, and we always found that it wasn't genius in our case, but you know, but yeah, so you need that, you know, you need to ignore that instinct to doubt yourself to get started. But then the problem with that is you also, once you get in that arena where people do start to take notice of you and they're willing to help out, you've really got to listen to that as well. So you've kind of got to, as much confidence as you need to have with yourself in the early stages, you've then got to rein that back in and kind of go, okay, well, whatever I feel like is right, I also, and you've got to find the people that you respect enough to listen to their opinions too. And it's funny because then we've had really influential and like incredibly intelligent and brilliant people give us advice. Like Paul Smith, the artistic director of Middle Child, sat us down, took us for a pint once, and gave us notes on a showing before we went to NSDF. And he was like, you know, this probably comes down to taste. Probably, you know, pick and choose what I say. You might think I'm talking rubbish, and we were all kind of like, yeah, as if. But you need that. You need to be able to like, and it's hard, right? Because especially when you're making your own stuff, you're just gonna be emotionally attached to it, and there's no way. Like, it's funny because ideally you wouldn't be, but there's no way to make it if you're not. So then whenever anybody criticizes you, and it's a necessary part of it, man, you know, it's really hard not to take that as you know, to heart. And you need to know when like rehearsal's finished, the day's over, your working day's over, you need to be able to like switch your mind off and go, I'm leaving that at work, right? You got to imagine it's your office and leave it at the office, because it drives you mad. We went to, I'm pretty sure, I don't really know that we had this conversation, but I'm pretty sure that the three of us, after we went to NSDF, we finished NSDF and all thought separately, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a theatre maker. And it's just because it's that hard to hear the criticism and to be so certain that you're onto a winner and then kind of be received, and not by everybody. We were really lucky that audiences were gracious and you know, lots of people got lots out of our stuff. But where we did experience criticism, it's really hard not to be like, oh, we got it all wrong. We don't know what we're talking about. We can't do this. You got to be really, really, really careful to find that balance between, you'll never improve if you don't listen to anyone, and you know, like worst case scenario, you're just going to go out there and be irrelevant or insulting or offensive to your audiences, and that's because you haven't listened to anyone who is seeing the work for what it is. And like, you don't get to decide as a director or a writer or a performer, whoever it is, you don't get to decide what your show means. You know what I mean? You get as close as possible, but the audience interprets it. So you've got to listen to the people on the outside. So yeah, I don't know whether that's useful
That's some really good advice right there. So, Jake, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem. I hoped we were going to get to talk about you a little bit, but
I'll come on your podcast.
That's it. That's what we'll make, address the balance.
Oh yeah. So thank you guys as well for tuning in. That's been another episode of Interval Conversations.